We've been talking a lot about the American Civil War and Reconstruction. Now I want to shift back over to Europe and the influence of nationalism in Europe in the mid to late 19th century. There are different countries I could pick to illustrate this, but I want to focus on Germany since it's going to play a pretty important role in the 20th century. The first slide you see here is the map. I just want to remind you where we left Europe at the end of the Napoleonic Wars. You can see there still isn't really a Germany. You've got something marked the German Confederation, but other than that, it's a loose confederation of different states and we're not going. So let's get Germany on the map. So first of all, nationalism. It's important to realize that this gets redefined to an extent, in part through Romanticism. Now, Romanticism does kind of go with romantic, but it means something a bit different. It's more emotionalism. So this is a pushback against the reason of the Enlightenment. And the argument here is that human beings are reasonable, but they also are emotional. They have emotive forces. So this is to go back to the noble savage and nature and all that type of thing. But in terms of nationalism, Romantic philosophers argued that people are inherently shaped by their language and their history. So to create a nation state, one of the things you're going to need to have is a shared history and then also a shared language. That language actually forms the way you think, and so it's really important. Secondly, that each ethnic people or group has its own unique characteristics. This is almost at the genetic level, although they would not use that word. So it wouldn't matter if my parents were French and I was born in France and I moved to England when I was 5. At some deep core level, I would always respond to things the way a French person would. I can't help myself. So in that sense, there's almost a way in which it's really difficult to change if not impossible, to change your nationality. And because of this means that each ethnic group needs to be ruled by someone from their own group. Only the French understand the French, and therefore it would be wrong for the French to be ruled by the Germans. It doesn't make any sense. It's not the way it should go. Now, this is a radical reworking of nationalism, which traditionally has just kind of been an outgrowth of people who lived in the same area. And so you could have multi-ethnic nationalism. You could have lots of ethnic groups that belong to a country, and they are loyal to that government, and they kind of have a shared sense of being part of that country. The U.S. is going to be different because it's going to have different nationalities. You have to create a sense of being American. But over in Europe, you are going to begin to see these nation states forming, new nation states. Obviously, France has been around for a long time. When it comes to Germany, then, let's look at this map. So Prussia, you can see that's all the purple bit. That is by far the largest state of the different German states. So this is the Alaska of Germany. This is going to be really important putting things together. But you can see there are lots of other little states that have a heritage of being independent. In the steps for German unification, then, it's important that some things change. So first of all, before Napoleon went marching across and conquering the German states, there actually were over 300 of them. And getting 300 little states together was going to be proving quite impossible. And so when these German states are kind of reconfigured after the Napoleonic period, there's, as you can see, only 39. And getting 39 states together is a touch easier than getting 300. The second thing that happens is right after the Napoleonic War, there is a kind of military coalition that loosely links the German states together. So it's kind of an alliance. There's no federal government or anything like that. I want to point out that includes Austria. And then also later than that, in the 1820s, a number of German states get together to form a free trade union. That does not include Austria. And so we do have some things that are linking these states together, which is an important foundation. The next big step in German unification is the 1848 Frankfurt Conference. In 1848, there were a lot of revolutions happening all across Europe. And in the German states, there was this call to unify. And so a number of delegates, some officially sent by their states and some who volunteered and didn't really have that official backing, meet at Frankfurt to try and create a unified Germany. This is going to fail for a lot of reasons, but one important reason it doesn't work is that there's a conflict over Lesser and Greater Germany. Lesser Germany would not include Austria. Now, the problem with Austria, you can see on this map that's just appeared. So this is Austria-Hungary, and you can see all the different groups that are in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So the green is German, but then you have all these other groups. So although there are Germans who are part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, how would that fit into Germany? Should Germany have Hungarians? Should it have Poles? Should it have Croats? That doesn't make any sense. So what do you do with Austria and the Germans who live in Austria-Hungary? That's one of the big issues. So Lesser Germany would be the German people, but not the Germans who live in Austria. And Greater Germany would include the Germans who live in Austria, but how would you fit that in? So if you can't get a united Germany through a conference, through sending lots of delegates and trying to have a continental congress the way we did in the United States, then what are you going to do? And one of the patterns you see in Europe is the emergence of a very strong state that helps to coordinate and unify the states around it. So we're going to take Prussia. Remember, that's that giant Alaska of the German states. And we need two really important people. The first is the King of Prussia. That's Wilhelm I. And then we need his prime minister, and that's Bismarck. And Bismarck's going to be very, very important as part of this. So Wilhelm would like to have a unified Germany. Bismarck's policies and approaches are going to help to put this together. And he's known for really seeing war as an outcome of diplomacy. So sometimes this is called realpolitik, where you don't, use these highfalutin diplomatic ideas. You just use whatever's at hand to get your diplomatic aims, and that would include war. So one of the things he wants to do is to show that Prussia has a very strong military, which is already relatively well known, but he needs a couple wars in order to defeat some opposition, some countries around Prussia. And then he can go to some of the other smaller states, the smaller German states, and he can say, look, you either join us or we're going to conquer you. Kind of, the carrot or the big giant stick. He therefore has two wars that he triggers off. The first is a war with Denmark, and the war with Denmark is actually to trigger a war with Austria. So Austria helps in this, taking some territory from Denmark. You don't need all the details in that. But then Prussia and Austria get into a war over what should happen to those territories that were taken. And that's the really important one. So the 1866 Prussian-Austrian War is critically important. So Austria is defeated, which is a major power, and that shows that Prussia is very important. Therefore, Prussia is going to go to some of those surrounding states and say, you can join us and have some rights and things like that, or we're going to pretty much threaten you and we can take you over. And so what happens then is the formation of the North German Confederation. The North German Confederation. If I was teaching this class in 1868 with my new European map, then right where you see northern Germany today would be a country called the North German Confederation. So for a little while, that's step one. So let's look at this map again. So you see Prussia, that's giant purple, and then this kind of gray bit is the North German Confederation that's added to Prussia. So it's all these North German states, but not the green bits. The green bits aren't in play yet. So that means he needs one more war. And so Prussia is going to trigger a war with France, which is, of course, another significant major power. Now, partially this is easy because the leader of France at this period, his name is Louis Napoleon Bonaparte III. he's not very popular at home. And so he's thinking, hey, a quick little war would be a great idea because then my people would support me. So basically, Prussia kind of manipulates France into a war. It's actually a very quick war. Prussia invades and actually the German troops get to Paris. France loses, and a new republic in France is declared. You're going to be reading about that, but I just wanted to link that piece in there. So there goes Louis Napoleon Bonaparte. He's out of power. But more importantly, those the green states that had not joined Germany join in. And so in 1871, there's a coalition of those other states, those smaller ones in the south. They join into the North German Confederation, and then it changes its name to Germany. So it's through this whole process of war and diplomacy that you get the new Germany. And then that means that King Wilhelm of Prussia becomes the Emperor of Germany because Prussia is the dominant player in the new Germany. And they also get some territory that's going to be really, really important. I'm going to bring up the map in just a second to show you where Alsace and Lorraine are. But part of the war is that this territory transfers from France to Germany. So let's bring this map up again. So in this map, then you can see all those green bits, they go and join to make Germany. And the kind of orangey piece is Alsace and Lorraine. Now, Alsace and Lorraine have been going back and forth between the German states and France since the Middle Ages. If you ever visit there, it is this odd amalgamation of French and German language and culture and food and different things. You can't quite tell if you're in Bavaria or you're in France. But the big issue here is that this goes now to Germany, and France is ticked off. And of course, not only did it lose the war, but it lost territory. And one of France's major foreign policy goals is going to be to get that back. I want to just highlight that because that's really important in World War I. So by 1871, Germany is on the map. This new country, it needs to prove itself. It needs to show that it's going to be a major player in European politics and also, of course, in world politics now that we're moving into imperialism.